Hey, everybody. This is Kasie Whitener coming to you live from Herndon, Virginia. I was going to say Herndon, South Carolina. That's kind of dumb, right? From Herndon, Virginia. This is right on SC, and our normal radio show is running a rerun right now because I'm live in my hometown. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Hopefully you'll tune in. You can leave comments and things like that. Let's kick it off and get it going. I made that really cool intro yesterday, probably yesterday. So Right on SC has been on a little bit of a hiatus. If you've been following the radio show, my esteemed co-host, Rex Hurst, took some vacation time. And of course, we're back into the semester for me as well. So I've been doing a whole lot of teaching classes over at the University of South Carolina. And this weekend, I got to come up to Virginia for a book signing event that my best friend, Tammy Smith, she's married now. Tammy Smith's holding for me out at her neighborhood. So if you're in the area and you'd like to come by that event, that would be super cool to get to see you there. In the meantime, I messaged our Fairfax County Library. I've got a good connection with them. They've invited me to do a couple of talks for them in the past. I'm going to do another one on Indie Author Weekend in November, or Indie Author Week in November. So I'll put some of the stuff related to that up on the socials so you can see when that's going to start. But I've got this opportunity with them. And so I reached out and I said, hey, I'm going to be in Virginia for the weekend hanging out with all my buddies. Would you like to maybe schedule an event on Saturday morning, first thing in the morning? Might not have been the best choice of timing, but they were really super cool. And the Fairfax Library got me in touch with the Herndon branch, and the Herndon branch here actually offered to host me for an event. So I'm in this room, this conference room, and there's chairs and people here to witness the live broadcast of a podcast, which maybe that's a little bit strange, right? Because usually podcasts are done recorded and then we clean them up and then we post them out there for you. But just like our live radio show, this is just a live broadcast here. So it's exciting to be here, fun to be in my hometown. Those of you who are watching on YouTube and watching on Facebook, you don't just have to look at me and my big, professional looking microphone. This whole time, I'm actually going to show you a slide deck that I built for this particular presentation that I've delivered a couple of times before, including one time through the Pat Conroy Literary Center with the Ollie group, right? So lifelong learning. They were kind enough to host me last summer it was a Zoom meeting, right? So it was a little bit just like this, actually, which was kind of fun too. And so I did writing about your hometown for them. And I've just modified it a little bit because I'm here in Herndon today and have people who are familiar with Herndon. So we'll talk a little bit about Herndon today. In the meantime, I've not used the share screen mode here before in StreamYard. So, be patient with me and let's hope it works out the way I want it to. Let me see. We're going to go to the beginning of the slide deck here. And I did a little bit of new branding as well for the radio show. Those of you who have been following the radio show, you get the behind the scenes footage on our YouTube channel. And so you saw the intro video. That's kind of common to most of our behind the scenes videos. And then, of course, the end scene that you're going to see here in just a second. So here we go. Share the screen. We're going to go with a particular window. Uh-oh. It says Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen. Why is that? Why is that the case? Okay, well, let's do it this way instead. Share a video file. No, it's not a video. I don't want to do that. Okay, I might have to work on that a little bit. In the meantime, the primary reason I came back to Herndon, other than this is my hometown, it's where I'm from, is that my first book, After December, takes place here in Herndon. And as a matter of fact, the main characters are from Herndon. And so it's kind of fun to get a chance to revisit these places that are in the book. So I made a little bit of a list of some of those places that I thought the folks here would be able to recognize some of them. I think this is going to give us a weird little mirror within the mirror look, but let's try that and see if that works out. Nope, still says Chrome doesn't have permission. So, okay, that's cool. I can figure that out. What else? So anyway, so talking about the book taking place in Herndon. So the first time I ever did one of these events, somebody said to me, like, why would you write about Herndon? And I said, well, it's my hometown. It's where I'm from. And I went to Herndon High School. And I left in 1995, which probably it was the best thing I ever did. I got out of Herndon and went down to Clemson for college and never really came back. I mean, I came back in terms of being able to spend time with my friends, but otherwise, I wasn't really coming back for any length of time. I never did move back to Herndon. I always just came up and visited. That might have fixed our screen share problem here. Let's give it a try. Give it a try. Let's see, share screen, window in Chrome. Let's do this. No, why does it keep kicking me out? Bummer. Oh, I see. I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, trying it again. Bear with me. Gotta love a live stream, right? So anyway, so here I am in Herndon. It's very, very different than it was before. And certainly than it was when I was here in high school, which you would expect, right? Because still going. I got kicked out. Chrome kicked me out because I was trying to share my screen and it didn't like it very much. But the live stream apparently kept going, and now I'm back in it. So there's that. But I've been trying to figure out how to share my screen. I've never done a share screen because I usually do live streams with my pals, right? So we do on Saturday nights we do a live stream called Parenting Porcupines, where me and my libertarian girlfriends get together and talk about parenting, which is kind of fun. It's the only time I'm on the internet after I've had drinks because I have like a very strict rule about not being on the internet after I've had something to drink. And then, but on Saturday nights, because we're doing Parenting Porcupines, my girlfriends and I, have a couple of glasses of wine or whatever. Okay, so now they can see the stream, the share screen, which is super cool. This is the new branding I was telling you guys about, which is the two book covers, my two book covers, and then Rex's book cover. He's got another book coming out, but so we'll add that to it when it comes. And then of course it's got the radio branding, the point, and then South Carolina Writers Association is a big sponsor for our show, and so we've got their logo up there as well. And then the title of this presentation has always been "You Can't Go Home Again." Which like really messed me up this morning when I went looking for it because I was looking for the word hometown on my desktop and I'm going around like hometown. I couldn't find it anywhere. And then I thought it's got to be here somewhere. And I finally found the keyword that let me find the file. But apparently I called it "You Can't Go Home Again." And I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you from here? Are you from Herndon?
I'm from here. Not Herndon, but yeah, Northern Virginia.
From the area. Yeah. So that makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. So things have changed. You've watched them change as they went. Yeah. Where for me, like I went away to college and I just kept kind of coming back, but then there would be years would go by. So it's been since I was here last time, it's been at least 2 years since I was here last time. And sometimes it will be longer than that. But yeah, it's very different than it was when we were coming up.
Yeah.
It's I think partly new people coming into town, but I think also it's partly that government expansion where we got a lot of new government businesses, a lot of businesses that are selling to the government,
Right.
and they just kind of blew this place up.
Yeah.
As I was driving over here, I'm staying at 1 Loudon with my friend.
Okay.
And as I was driving over here, I was looking at all these names of these companies on these buildings. And I was like, who are these people? Who are these companies?
No, that's,
But yeah, a lot of them.
down 28, and I live in Chantilly near Westfields.
Yeah.
There's tons of government contractors.
I remember when they built Westfields, and a friend of ours was renting a condo out there, and all of us are like, where are you? You're so far away. And it's like, no, not really. It's still just as close. And my friend who's in 1 Loudon now, he built a house in South Riding about the same time. And yeah, and so when he built the house, I was like, I don't even know where South Riding is. What are you talking about? And in Before Pittsburgh, one of the characters in Before Pittsburgh, well, they're talking about it After December, building a place in South Riding.
Oh, wow.
And so in Before Pittsburgh, he's staying there. And the climax scene in Before Pittsburgh actually takes place at Dulles Airport. So
Okay.
Brian is here, he's in town, and he's trying to leave on the morning of September 11th. And of course, he's not able to do that. And so he ends up getting in a cab and going back to his friend's house at South Riding. So the climax scene takes place in South Riding. Yeah, that's the only time he's in Virginia and Before Pittsburgh. And After December, the whole book takes place in Virginia, specifically in Herndon. But Before Pittsburgh takes place mostly in San Francisco and then kind of all over the world because he's traveling around. He's a globetrotter, that Brian.
Okay.
So I was sharing this slide deck with the live stream out there. So if you guys can see it, you're seeing now my bio page. Yesterday, I got to teach at Clemson, which is super cool because that's my alma mater. So I went over there and I'm like dressed in my orange, and but I actually teach at the University of South Carolina, which is Clemson's arch rival. And when I teach at Carolina, I carry my Clemson stuff into the room with me. So when I was teaching at Clemson yesterday, I brought my Carolina stuff into the room with me. They were not very pleased with that.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of kind of joking around about Kasie teaching at Carolina, and somebody's got to educate
Yeah.
the chickens down in Carolina. And but anyway, I love them. I love my students at the Darla Moore School. So, but this is the slide I showed there yesterday, and I told them I was excited to get to talk to them about writing and being an author and entrepreneurship and this kind of thing. But it was an ethics class, and so I'd given them 3 headlines they could choose from on the ethics stories, and they picked one of the stories that was not related to my writing career. So I was like, okay. So instead we ended up talking about distribution and how Target Short pays their invoices and my life before I became a university instructor. So anyway, so if you guys are looking at this slide now, you're seeing that, of course, the Write on SC is part of my bio, and that's what we're doing today. Instead of listening to the radio show, which is a rerun, you're watching the live stream, hopefully tuned in. And now that I've started sharing my screen, I can't see if there's anybody tuned in. So I'm just going to believe that there's a whole audience on the other side. I know at the very least my husband's watching. So there's that. All right. So what does it mean to be home? I think the hometown concept, the idea of building home, when we think about characters, where are they from? Where do their values come from? What do they understand about the world based on where they're from? So I think that's a really interesting concept. And part of the After December, for me, After December was catharsis, right? Having left home and then sort of boxed up how I felt about home and put it in that box in this nice little book here for sale. But yeah, I think for me, it was a matter of trying to purge that part of my life and move into something else. But I think that a lot of times with characters, we don't give a whole lot of thought to where they're from, other than to just say, this is where they're from. Are there characters that you know that are from a particular place that it really matters?
I can't think of any.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the first things I always ask people: where are you from, or where are you from originally?
Yeah.
Conversation. Yeah.
Especially here in Northern Virginia,
Right.
because there's a lot of transplants.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it was that way in Charlotte. We lived in Charlotte right around 2001, 2002 timeframe, and I think we might have met one person that was from Charlotte. Everybody else had moved into Charlotte from somewhere else.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
What's the furthest away you've ever heard somebody being from?
Oh, in this area?
Oh, yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, we have people from all over the world,
Yeah.
To the library, to youth library. And then I worked for the airlines at Dulles Airport, and I worked at the State Department too. So Yeah.
So you've met people from literally everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I think, and at the university, so down in South Carolina, they have a big international business program. And so we have a lot of students that are here from Southeast Asia, China, Japan, right? And then, of course, all of Europe. And some of my students are exchange students from Spain and from Portugal, and which is pretty cool talking to them. And then, especially the very first week of school, because usually they come a couple of weeks ahead of time and get kind of acclimated or whatever. But this year they wouldn't let them in the country until like the day that school started. And so they're like pulling their bags with them and like walking into the classroom. I mean, almost literally. And I was asking them, like, well, what do you think of Columbia, South Carolina? You know, how do you feel about it? They're like, well, we just got here yesterday, so we haven't had a whole lot of time to look around. But it seems cool now, you know, a little bit further into the semester, they're getting acclimated and they seem to really enjoy the area, which is cool. And Columbia's it's a kind of a big city, but not really. It has a very sort of small town feel. And I was not prepared for South Carolina at all when I left here, because here everything is so everything's spread out, and you know you're going to drive from. We banked at Navy Federal in Vienna, right? So living in Herndon, and I was like working at the Herndon Community Center, and he'd give me my paycheck, and I would like drive out to Vienna to deposit my paycheck in my Navy Federal savings account, and you know, of course, take some of the cash out. But it was a good, you know, that's a hike, right? Like we're gonna, I go pick up my paycheck on Friday morning, and then we're gonna drive out to Vienna.
Right.
Jump in, guys! You know, we're going on a road trip out to Vienna.
It's 3 times as long now.
Yeah, I would think so. And some of those back roads that are like not back roads anymore, but they were like little 2-lane roads, and they were, I mean, we enjoyed driving them because we were new drivers, you know, 16, 17 years old. And so we had a lot of fun driving those roads. But now I could see where they're probably so clogged up that you can't ever even get up above 35 miles an hour because there's so many people traveling on them. Yeah. All right. So I think home is not so much a place as much as it's a sense or a feeling about a certain thing. And I still have a lot of affection for Herndon. I mean, as much as I wanted out, like, I mean, I wanted to go as far away as I could possibly get. And I ended up at Clemson, but I really wanted to go to California, and I ended up at Clemson. I think part of the reason I put Brian in California is because that's actually where I wanted to go. And that's where he ended up going. But I think part of it is being familiar with what you're seeing there, things that you grew up with, maybe took for granted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about some of the places here in Herndon that people that aren't here anymore. And I'm wondering like how many of people would remember those places, right? So Santa Fe Q Club, it was the Hard Times Cafe, and next door they opened up the Santa Fe Q Club. And it was just, you know, you could go in there and shoot pool. And at one point they moved from where they were on this side of the Eldon Street, you know, and then they moved over to the other side, and they had that big space over on that. It was just like a 90-degree turn, you know, same shopping center. But I remember when they moved, my sisters and I all waited tables at Hard Times Cafe. And then I spent my summers, I came back from college over the summer and spent my summers bartending at Santa Fe Q Club and at Hard Times. And so, yeah, and then so I put that in the book because the book takes place in 1999, and the place was still here in 1999. So it's in the book. But there are people that have read the book that have been like, "What is that? I don't recognize that." I'm like, "Yeah, it was there. I promise you. It's not a myth. I did not make it up." You know where the Virginia Kitchen is? Yes, it was in the Virginia Kitchen Shopping Center, and there was a Kmart there, right? And it was in that shopping center.
Yeah. Oh, people still call it the Kmart shopping center.
Do they really? What's in that Anchor store now?
I don't even know. Yeah. I think there's a Mom's Organic Market over there, and Sprouts and all. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super bougie around here now too. Like that's the phrase my friends like to. My Jamaican friend loves to use that phrase. Gosh, just super bougie, Kasie. Yeah, I think more than likely things grow into a more sophisticated kind of version of themselves, but it wasn't very sophisticated when I was here. At least not that shopping center. And then for a while, when I would come back, my best friend's mom still lives here, and for a while she and I would go to Virginia Kitchen for breakfast whenever I was here. And then we started going to the Amphora Diner for breakfast, and that's kind of now our tradition as we hit the Amphora Diner. And I did include the Amphora in before Pittsburgh. I mean, in after December. At one point, Brian and Chris go over to Tony's parents' house, and when they get there, there's nobody there. I mean, except his parents, and they feel like that's going to be just like too much attention. And so Brian's like, I'm hungry, let's go eat instead, and then we'll come back. And so they end up going to M4, and they're sitting at the diner at M4 and having some conversation around, and we start to see just how much Brian has grown away from his friends, because he doesn't know what any of them are up to. And Chris is trying to tell him, like, well, I'm in school here and I'm doing this and that. And Brian's like, did I know that? Was I supposed to know that? Right? Did you tell me that? So that was a kind of a fun scene to write. And then anytime I'm in town, I go by M4 and I'm like snapping pictures. I'm like, look, I'm at the M4. It's in the book. And then they actually do Tony's funeral at the Green Funeral Home. Fortunately, I've never had to be inside Green Funeral Home. But in terms of where it stands in town, it's iconic, right? Like, I don't know anybody that's from Herndon or been to Herndon that doesn't know Green Funeral Home. Yeah. So I came down 2019, right before we launched the book, and stood in downtown and was like taking videos of it for my Instagram. So it's out there. It's all out there on Instagram. You can see it. And then a couple of other, Auto Haas. That's the other place. So when we were kids, that road that came right by Auto Haas, I can't remember it, but it was like a back road for us to get into Herndon before they finished the parkway. And so we would come through that way, and there used to be a ton of Volkswagen Beetles there. And so whenever we went by there, it was just like each other just wailing on each other, like trying to catch as many as you possibly could. Right. And I put that in the book too. And my friends who remember Auto Haas having, 8 or 10 of those Volkswagens out in front are like, yes, I remember that. I remember we used to drive that way. My friend Domare Emily used to live over off of that road, and we would intentionally go by there while we were taking her home from high school so we could just beat each other down. It's just dumb. Teenagers just being dumb. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a little bit to be said about home not just being a physical place, but also the people who are there and the people that you feel comfortable with, that you feel like you can be yourself around. So I'm really interested in this Generation X found family concept, right? Where, and I don't know why Generation X seemed to have clung to that, but it might be because of being latchkey kids. And so our friends became our family. And then, when your family is not showing up for you, your friends show up for you, right? They're the ones that sort of take the brunt of the really hard stuff because maybe your family, for whatever reason, isn't available. So I thought that was a really interesting theme too. And I've worked that more so in Before Pittsburgh than in After December. Although in Brian's case, his parents are really good parents. That's a really tight family. The way they care for him and spend time with him and support the decisions that he makes, they're actually really good people, which kind of makes it even worse that he's such a jerk to them. And After December, because as it turns out, they're not bad people, right? Like they're not mean. They don't ignore him. They're not. But anyway, so people have been reading Before Pittsburgh are like, and Brian's parents, they are amazing. I'm like, I know, right? And so then I feel kind of bad because I'm like, wasn't I supposed to give them flaws? Aren't all characters supposed to have flaws? And are his parents just, amazing and perfect? But a little bit. Not so much in After December. Maybe he's just more critical of them. But I think that's part of it too. As we age up a little bit, we start to appreciate our parents a little bit more. He gets to it a little faster, I think, than probably other people do. It took me to having my own kid to start to really appreciate.
I think that's how most people are. Yeah. Once you have your own kid, you realize how much work it is.
That's right. That's right. So I think there's that. And I also think I mentioned before the friends, when we share trauma, right, where something has happened to all of us, and that's a common thing. So in After December, we go to Herndon for Tony's funeral, and we kind of see how everybody's experiencing the funeral, but that's such a microcosm. It's just 5 days in that book that you don't really know whether this is going to make them or break them. It could, in fact, be the thing that drives them all apart. And the last chapter of the book, spoiler, you see that has not been the case, that they were able to maintain. So in Before Pittsburgh, we go into those 3 years that are missing and start to see what did they do to be able to maintain those friendships. And at what point did they move past Tony's death and stop letting that be the thing that defined their commonality. That's not the only thing we have in common. We did go through that together, but it's not the only thing we have in common. And what else is there that we can build on? And I really enjoyed doing that too, especially during COVID, because Before Pittsburgh was written during COVID. And the idea of whether or not you can actually connect with people when you're not with those people. We were a little luckier during COVID because we had all the social media and Zoom and everything like that. Brian and his friends don't have that. They have like email and they can make trips,
It's been so hard to write that with, remembering that those things weren't around then.
Yeah, there's some email exchanges, and he's not very nice over email. He has a tendency to email when he's good and drunk. And I was thinking about, like, especially when he was in Barcelona, he had to go into an internet cafe to even access his email, right? So if he's sitting in that internet cafe, he's kind of bleary eyed, like, let me just answer my email here real quick. It's not a comfortable place to write out like a really thoughtful, emotional letter to anybody, right? So it's going to be kind of terse. It's going to be kind of cold. And then once he gets back home, back to San Francisco, he does have his own computer. He does have access. But I didn't go into any of the details of that because I couldn't remember, like, if we were dialing up at that point or if we actually had Wi-Fi. Like, all of that stuff was sort of like, okay, do I want to really bother to get bogged down with those details, or do I just want to say he checked his email? Like, end of story, you know what I mean? But it still wasn't as prevalent in 2001, right? And he doesn't have a cell phone, so when he gets trapped at Dulles Airport on 9/11, he's standing in line at the payphones like everybody else.
Oh, right.
So that was a door. It sounded like somebody coming in.
The rest of the staff coming.
Okay, so we're here. We're halfway through our live stream this morning talking about home and writing about your hometown and what's that sense of home. What does it feel like to be part of home? There's coffee here. There's donuts here. There are not commercials on a live stream, which is a little bit different than doing it on the radio where I have to stop every couple minutes for commercials. I've got the screen share up, and because I'm doing that, I can't see what's happening on the live stream. So I'm going to go ahead and close that for a sec. Hey, Jodie Cain Smith. Good to see you, and thanks for coming out and participating here. I'm glad to have you as part of that viewing crowd. I've been talking about the books, which you are intimately familiar with. Jodie was my editor for Before Pittsburgh, and even before that, she went through the paces with me on After December. We met through the South Carolina Writers Association. As I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, the South Carolina Writers Association in South Carolina, you don't have to be a resident of South Carolina to be a member, but they offer a lot of live programming, a lot of Zoom events, and they also offer local chapters where you can bring your work in and get your work critiqued. And they're right now in the middle of the fall set of midday workshops. So this upcoming Tuesday, they'll be doing another midday workshop. It's free. It's open to the public. You just have to go out to my scwa.org to be able to find it. Let me see if I can find, if I have one of those banners. I don't, so I'll put it up here. It's my scwa.org. If you go out there and click on the events tab, you'll find those writing conversations, which are the free and open to the public writing conversations available for anybody that would like to participate in those. And then if you miss it for whatever reason and you become a member of SCWA, when you log into the website with your membership, you can actually access all of the content that we've been creating over the last year and a half, and there's just been a lot of it. A lot of it is these kind of live stream broadcasts that we did that are on our YouTube page. So there's also the South Carolina Writers Association YouTube. While you're out here on YouTube and you're watching, go ahead, you can navigate over there and take a look at SCWA and what they have to offer on the YouTube page. On the Right on SC YouTube page, we have behind the scenes footage, and the behind the scenes footage is filmed for our patrons every weekend. And so after we get off the radio, Rex and I will cut the camera on. He doesn't ever come in front of the camera, but he and I will cut the camera on, and then he and I will continue the conversation for just a few minutes about whatever it was we were talking about. And those behind the scenes videos go out to our patrons who support us on patreon.com. So patreon.com/rightonSC is a way that you can go and support the radio show and make more things like this happen, make more live broadcasts happen, more events happen. You guys can't see it, but there's my whole little event table is set up with my books. Oh, and my new painted wine glasses. my After December wine glasses. I actually sold out of these at the last event, so I had to paint some new ones. So I have some of these. Those are for my book club hostesses. So if you have a book club and you bring After December to your book club, I will give you a wine glass. Or Before Pittsburgh, if you bring Before Pittsburgh to your book club, you get a shot glass. Also hand painted. Limited edition hand-painted shot glasses. These are for the people that are willing to take a chance on me and bring that book into their home, into their book club. And then I'll come and visit your book club too. So that's one part of my book club marketing that happens in that particular way. We're here, we're live, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. We've got a little bit of an audience online. And my new friend, who is the publisher of Taffeta, is here. So I'm glad to see you. Thank you for coming. And there's coffee, but you brought some coffee, and there's donuts as well. So I don't know. I probably will eat a donut when we're done here. But I've been talking about this hometown concept, and I've been sharing. I have a slide deck that I've been sharing with our online people. So it's part of that YouTube video. Folks can see that. I'm going to pull this back up. I was talking about whether or not home is a place or whether home is a person. And you're from here too, from the Herndon area?
No, I'm from Michigan.
From Michigan, but you live here in the Herndon area.
I live in Ashburn.
And how long have you been here?
Well, I'm a foreign service spouse, so we've been in and out of here for 12 years. But by in and out, I mean we've also lived in Hong Kong, Vietnam, Russia, Czech Republic.
All over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a globetrotter, a little bit like Brian. And I was talking before about Before Pittsburgh. We see in After December, it's 5 days here in Herndon. So that's the only place. So all the landmarks are associated with Herndon. Amphora Cafe, the high school bleachers, like it's all very Herndon centric. But then we see Brian go to Barcelona. And once he gets to Barcelona, he goes back to San Francisco. His parents moved to Tucson. They have a weekend in Nashville. They're down in Los Angeles. So he's kind of all over the place, which wasn't quite as common for us back in like 99, 2000, because it was kind of expensive. But he's an only kid and his parents have some money. So he's able to kind of leverage that and get himself where he needs to go. But I didn't write a whole lot about Herndon. The only Herndon scene in Before Pittsburgh is 9/11, and it takes place at Dulles Airport. So. All right, home is where one starts from. That's my T.S. Eliot quote. I think writers use home for a stage. It creates for your character the place where they can perform. So in home, on the good side, right, you see the sense of safety, of security, you see nostalgia in that kind of thing. But on the bad side, you can also see trauma, and you can see people wanting to escape. You can see them rejecting home in favor of what they think might be greener pastures. After December does a lot of that, where for Brian, Herndon is a trauma. He does not want to be here. He doesn't like it here. He's glad to have escaped. He doesn't feel like himself when he's here. He feels like there's just a lot of bad memories. And then when we get to Before Pittsburgh, he doesn't seem to have a home. And that sense of the loss of home is really what kind of dominates his character in Before Pittsburgh, trying to figure out, what do I do about getting that comfort back and getting that nostalgia back? And his parents have moved to Tucson. And so all of his things from his home in Herndon are relocated, and they feel alien in this new environment. And that was a lot of fun to write about too, because my parents did that. After I went to college, they moved somewhere else. And you start seeing like the pictures, the portraits that were always hanging in a particular hallway are now in a new hallway, and it feels very awkward and unhappy. And as much as I know we're going to do that to our daughter too, like the minute she goes to college, we're going to pack up and leave. Maybe not tell her where we went. The idea there though is that like you've missed that whole piece. It's almost like that whole box that you lived in no longer exists, right? And so I don't know if people out there drive by in their hometowns, if they drive by their old houses, but that is probably like the worst feeling ever, is to drive by your old house and see other people occupying it, right? But you do that when you're here?
No, well, I started from Michigan. I'm from Ann Arbor, actually. So I like to go back for football games. Didn't go to college there, but I'm a diehard Wolverines fan, and I can't stop myself. I drive by. My parents are divorced. I drive by both houses. Neither of my parents live there anymore. I'm like, there it is, and it sucks, but I can't stop myself.
It's like picking a scab. Yeah, no, I don't blame you. When I'm here, when I'm in Herndon, I go by the house that I went to high school in.
The house I really grew up in, they put in these weird, ugly, like stained glass windows, and I swear, there's a part of me that just wants to go smash them.
There's some things to unpack with your therapist.
You can see my initials carved with paneling.
Yeah.
Of course, I carved my initials in there, and they're still there. And
Yeah.
like, take out the stained glass bit. Yeah. I'm not right in the head when I do it.
No, look, I think you're onto something though, because when we lived in Kingston Chase here in Herndon when we were little kids. We swam at the Kingston Chase pool. I remember even being in high school and still having records on the board at the Kingston Chase pool. But so then we moved across town to Copper Crossing, which is over where Flores Elementary is off of Centerville Road, and it's Flores United Methodist Church is still over there. Anyway, it's on the other side of town. And in our neighborhood over there, it was close enough, and there was so much distance. It was so much open space between us and the airport that you could actually see the green and white light at the airport. And we used to play freeze tag to that, where like when it turned green, you could run, but as soon as it went white, you had to drop, right? And I don't know who really kept up with it, but it was like the first person at the top of the hill would win that game. It was airport freeze tag. We called it Russian freeze tag because it was the Cold War and everything was the Russians, right? But yeah, we used to play that all the time. And so when I think we moved over there, then we moved to California, and then we moved back. Well, when we moved back, our neighbors still lived there. And so we went over and spent the night with our neighbors, Kathleen Cordy. I'm hoping to see KK today, and her sister, Mary Ellen. But so we went over there and we stayed with them, and we met the neighbor. And when the neighbor said, she goes, we're like, oh, we used to live in your house. Our parents had built that house as new construction. And we're like, we used to live in your house. And she goes, oh, I know. You wrote your names everywhere. And we probably did, like in big letters on the concrete floor in the basement. You know what I mean? I don't know if people, I'm not sure. I know my South Carolina people don't know the glory that is an unfinished basement. But the unfinished basement in Northern Virginia, man, we used to roller skate down there, move all the boxes to the side, and just roller skate in circles around the unfinished basement. Jeez, 80s. Okay, now I'm getting really nostalgic. My editor Jodie is watching too, and she was saying how awesome Brian's parents are. I don't think we know it in After December. After December, Brian's pretty harsh on his parents. He's pretty mean to his parents. But in Before Pittsburgh, they're really good people. They take really good care of him. And I was wondering to her, I asked her when we were doing the editing process, like, do I need to give them flaws? Like, do I need to make them maybe a little bit not great? And she's like, no, I think they're perfect. I think we all want Brian's parents. I think you get to the end of the book and you go, gosh, I wish those were my parents. And then at that point, you really don't like Brian for being mean to his parents. So, okay, that's fine. Yeah, and they were based off of my friend Jessica. Her parents, when we were here in town, Jessica's parents both worked for the clandestine service. They worked for the CIA, and her dad was an IT guy, and so he had more of a regular schedule than her mom. But her mom rose all the way up through the ranks, and she would disappear for weeks at a time, and she just had things that she had to do, like important things, and they couldn't talk about it. They couldn't tell Jessica what they were doing or what their work was like, and so there created this sort of alienation between her and them. Like they had this whole life that she didn't know anything about, and so I worked that theme pretty hard with Brian and After December. And then, of course, when her dad read the book, he was like, that's not us, right, Kasie? Was like, no, Tom, that's not you. It's not you. But then, of course, I make up for it in Before Pittsburgh, where I made them wonderful. They moved to Tucson, and they just take really good care of Brian. So we've been talking about home and writing about your hometown. And I want to thank the folks that are here watching on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks, y'all, for being part of it. Our normal 9:00 broadcast of the Right on SC is right now playing a rerun, and I don't even know what episode they're playing. But because it's a rerun, they're not going to mention some of the upcoming things for the South Carolina Writers Association, which is one of our sponsors. So I just want to give that note again real quick. SCWA hosts on Tuesdays what we call Writing Conversations, and they're free and open to the public. They're for an hour from 12 to 1. If you register for one, you're registered for all of them. So you'll get that email the one time, but we're not going to keep reminding you with it. So just go back and find that one and log in. But if you missed them for whatever reason, you can access the recordings on the YouTube channel, but only if you're a member of SCWA. So you want to join SCWA by going to the website, myscwa.org. You can also check out the full event calendar there too. We've just booked another diversity conversation. It's called Diversity in Publishing with a gal. I'm going to get her name wrong if I try to say it. So just go out there and find the events page and you'll find it. But it's not coming up till November. We got a little bit of time on that. And we just did a Become an Author series with Jill Criswell. That was a lot of fun. She's a YA fantasy author, and she was in studio with me last week. We got to ask her some questions about writing YA fantasy. This is a hot genre. It feels like everybody is writing YA fantasy, and that might actually be true, that's what everybody is writing. And a lot of women our age, I'm saying ours, like Jodie and me, a lot of women our age, that's what they're reading is young adult fantasy. And I kind of like, I have one of my good friends is throwing the party this afternoon, Teresa, that's all she reads is young adult fantasy. And I'm always like, but why? And then I started reading. I was like, oh, I get it. It's these super empowered young women that are the only way to save the world. Like it's always a 16-year-old girl that's caught in a love triangle, but she can save the world. She's the only one that's able to save the world. So it's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of cool tropes that show up there in the YA. And then if you feel like the YA doesn't go far enough because you're a romance junkie like me, then you can jump out of YA and go into some like actual romance novels that'll get it done for you. All right, last little bit here of the hometown conversation here. Let me pull up that screen again. I've done this presentation before, and I'm going to do it again here on Indie Author Week for the Fairfax County Library, all by Zoom. It won't be live and in person, it'll be by Zoom. But the idea of what does home mean in a book, and what does it tell you about the character, and how seriously should you take it when you're figuring out who your characters are. I think a lot of times for writers, it comes as a secondary, maybe tertiary knowledge, like this is just who this character is, that's just where they're from. But it tells us a lot about their ambition. It tells us about their worldview, what they've been exposed to based on whether or not they're from a small town or a big town, whether they're from the Midwest or they're from California. And I had some fun with Before Pittsburgh with my native Californians and their view of the world. There's one woman that he meets and he tells her that he's from Virginia, and she says, tell me exactly where that is. And he's like, how do you not know the original 13 colonies? And she's like, are you impugning my Northern Virginia or my California education? He goes, I'm exactly impugning your public education. How do you not know? But that was a real conversation my mom had with a woman that had spent her whole life in California. And we moved out there. And my mom said that we'd moved there from Virginia. And the woman goes, educate me exactly on where that is. And my mom's like, it's the nation's capital. How do you not know where this place is? And the lady goes, there's just so many states over there. There's just so many.
I've had the same thing with Michigan. 'Cause I'm like, the mitten, the Great Lakes, I get a blank look. And I'm like, you looked at a map, right? The mitten. I've never heard it called that. Like, okay, I'm from Michigan. Maybe people outside Michigan don't call it that, but look at it.
Well, it's true that people outside of Michigan do not call it the mitten. So I'll give that person that. But certainly if you have seen a map, you know where Michigan is, right? At the very least, we understand that Michigan is like the topmost state, right?
Oh, see,
It makes sense.
Just this minute.
have you heard of the Great Lakes, though? I mean, come on, people.
The great,
I
the
can't
what?
tell you how many people are like, the Great Lakes, well, it's not, real swimming or something. You can see Wisconsin. I'm like, Lake Michigan's like the size of the state of Florida. You cannot see Wisconsin standing on there.
Right.
No, you can't. Ships wreck there all the time. There's like songs about the Edmund Fitzgerald. Come on. No. All right, I'm going too deep local.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say like, and now Michigan has lost us. But so the first person I met from Michigan when I was in South Carolina, she moved down to run the box office at the Peace Center for the Performing Arts. Two really strange things about this person. Great gal. Like this is not me trash talking her. The first was she's from Michigan and everything was like, well, in Michigan, ... Well, in Michigan, ... I was like, you are in South Carolina, friend. Like you might get away with that for like 3 times, maybe 4, but eventually people go, we don't care. Like we just straight up do not care what happens in Michigan, right? You're now here. I need for you to adjust. And there's a huge backlash right now in the low country of South Carolina because there's a lot of people who've moved there from Ohio. And Lord have mercy how the South Carolinians do not like the people from Ohio. We don't care how you did it in Ohio. Go back to Ohio. It's really rough there. So there was that like it felt like she just couldn't let go of Michigan. Like everything was better in Michigan. I was like, I feel like maybe you just need to go home. And the other was that she always wanted to be a box office manager. that had been her lifelong ambition. From the time she was a little kid, she used to play box office, right? And like she had gone to school and had worked immediately in like the theater at her school and had trained to be a box office manager. That was her lifelong ambition. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I had never met anybody that had such a, number one, a very specific idea of what they wanted to do, but number two, in such a, I don't mean to demean it, but like in such a mundane capacity. Like, can't anybody do this? Like, it's not like I've always wanted to be an astronaut or I've always wanted to be a fighter pilot, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that you're like, aim high, friends. Like, not a whole lot of people get to do that. But like, legit, anybody can be a box office manager. The guy I'm spending the night with this weekend, my friend from high school, he worked at the movie theater when we were in high school. He was in the box office at the movie theater. He was 16. You know what I mean? He's like, come down for making popcorn. I'm going to sell some tickets. Like, this is not a big deal, right? I was stunned by it, just totally stunned by it.
That's the weird. The first part I heavily relate to is maybe it's a Midwestern thing. We also hate Ohio, but we're really Michigan. It's your identity. I was in Moscow in 1991 on the subway right before New Year's, wearing a Michigan sweatshirt, and I had no less than 4 people suss me out and be like, American? Michigan? I was invited to a party for New Year's Eve. It was like the most bizarre thing. I'm like in a very foreign country at a very weird time, making friends just by wearing my t-shirt.
So they weren't from Michigan. They just recognized, oh, they were from there. Okay,
like
yeah.
staying together
So South Carolina does that too. I was in Amsterdam and I was walking through Amsterdam with my Clemson Crew shirt on, jacket on, and this guy on the opposite side, like we're going past each other on the walkway, and he goes, Clemson, and he's like running in the wrong direction to talk to me so that we can talk about Clemson. And then I was in New York and I was wearing a baseball cap that's just navy blue and has the palmetto tree on it, and this guy sat on the subway for 3 extra stops to talk to me about South Carolina. So yeah, South Carolina is that way too. And my grandfather used to say that when he joined the Navy, you'd hear somebody say they were from South Carolina, and like 4 or 5 other people go, I'm from South Carolina. And he said it was like your kin. I mean, it doesn't matter if you were 500 miles away from each other. Well, the state's not that big, right? But if somebody's in Greenville and somebody's in Charleston, if you were both from South Carolina and you're somewhere else, you're now friends. Like, you are buddies. You grew up together. You know everybody, right?
Virginia's like that.
No.
Because that's the thing. My husband's from Connecticut, and we've been married 20 years. He's probably used to it because I wear Michigan stuff all the time.
Right.
And people just walk by and be like, "Go blue!" And I give him the fist.
Yeah.
And he's just like, "You're all freaks."
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where in the world we are. It happens constantly. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
My sister thought that. My sister thought that too, because she went to WVU. And so we'll be sitting somewhere and I was wearing my Clemson stuff and people would just come walking up to me and talk about Clemson. She's like, why do they do that? I'm like, because we went to Clemson. And she's like, yeah, but I'm wearing my West Virginia stuff. I bet half this room went to West Virginia and none of them talked to me. And I'm like, there might be a reason for that. I can't tell you why. I just know that if you see somebody wearing Clemson, you're going to hear "Go Tigers," and we'll stop, we'll talk. And anytime I traveled, when I was a consultant, I was traveling every other week back and forth to Maine, and I always wore my Clemson stuff in the airport because I like to hear other people say "Go Tigers," and it made me feel like I wasn't alone, but I absolutely was. Traveling all the way to Maine, all the way back, the whole day could be like the loneliest day ever. But if you're wearing your Clemson stuff, somebody's going to say "Go Tigers." So I always travel to my Clemson stuff. Yeah. That's cool though, to know that Michigan does it too. And I think Auburn does as well. Like, there's a couple of other schools that I know that's their way of recognizing each other, even if they had total strangers, but if you're wearing your colors, we got you. And one night we were coming back from Colorado, the night Clemson was playing Louisville for the first time. And this dude stopped us in the airport, and he and my husband talked for like 30 minutes about what was going to happen when we started playing Lamar Jackson in Louisville. And I was like, you literally, nobody cares. Like, we need to get on our plane. What is happening right now? And I think it was just because the guy didn't live near a lot of other Clemson fans. And so it was his first chance to really talk to anybody about that game. But I was like, Charlie, we got to go, dude. Like, what is happening? You're not going to be friends. You're not exchanging business cards. Like, this conversation needs to end now. But I also think that that sense of alienation when you're in an airport where you feel like you're all by yourself, you're alone, this travel thing. I worked that really hard. And before Pittsburgh, it became more of a collective feeling after 9/11 where we're all in this together. So as much as I think like before 9/11, when we would travel, I think people were kind of doing this and not paying attention to anybody else. But then maybe it was because we were taught to sort of be diligent. If you see something, say something or whatever. But my experience in airports since then has been that, like, I get you. I know you're feeling rushed or hurt. Don't worry about it. If it takes a little longer to get your order, I'm okay with that. I have a lot of patience for other travelers in airports, and I've felt that they do as well. I don't know if that's true of everybody's experience, but it's been my experience that people are a little bit more patient with other travelers now than we were before 9/11, and at the very least care about the other travelers too in this short experience we're having together. All right, we're here. It's like 9:54. That's usually the time that we're doing our how to do this in the radio show. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to write about a hometown or how to incorporate that into your story. I think the crucial part here is this idea of the return. This is a classic story, the venture and the return. And when we come back to the place that we're from, our idealized view of that place can either be confirmed, right? We come back and it is in fact that beautiful home that we remember. That was my experience coming back to my grandparents' house, right? It's always that beautiful, safe place that I remember it to be. Or it could be totally destroyed. You can come back to that house that you grew up in and you drive by and you don't recognize the cars and they've painted the door a weird color and you don't right? So there can be a sense of alienation about that place too. But I definitely think it's always bittersweet. There's always the little bit of sweet where I feel good about being here because it's where I'm from. I'm familiar with it, but I'm a little mad because it moved on without me. It got bigger. People got here. They changed it. They brought things that I'm not, necessarily happy about. Even just the Washington football team dropping the mascot. And I don't mind that. I really don't. I really don't have a problem with it at all. Like, fine, get rid of the mascot. And at the same time, I'm like, but does that mean I have to throw my stuff away? Because I don't want to. I mean, I still have a lot of nostalgia for that. I grew up with the team, right? So I think there's that bittersweet feeling always when we come back to our hometown. And last night I spent 4 hours talking to my friend that I'm staying with, and we've known each other since we were sophomores in high school. And every time I see him, he's just a little bit older. And I'm not sure why, because I'm not getting any older. I don't know why that is. What's happening to you, friend? Why are you getting older? I'm just kidding. He's just as handsome as ever, Kev, just as handsome as ever. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the live broadcast. I appreciate you. Of course, anytime that we can do anything to promote the work of the authors that are on our featured author page, you can find that out on writeonsc.blog. We'd be glad to do that. Jodie Cain Smith stopped by today. Thank you for being here, Jodie Cain Smith. She's got 2 books out this summer. One of them is a reissue of The Woods at Barlow Bend, which was her grandmother's tale. It's a really great YA kind of Southern Gothic mystery, which is fantastic. And then she has her brand new book, which is Bayou Cresting, The Wanting Women of Hewitt Point. And if you are wondering how women in the late 18th century put up with the oppressed men that they were dealing with, this is the book for you, because man, do they deal with those men. So it's a great chance to go in and read some of those Southern Gothic stories. It's a novel in stories by Jodie Cain Smith. And I'm glad to promote her and share her work with all of you in our Write on SC audience. I did mention that our friends from Taffeta are here, so I'm going to share them in show notes as well, so you guys can take a look at this. This is our target audience. This is our crowd. Jodie, this is all our women in their 40s that are what to do with teenage kids, what to do with kids that have gone off to college. It's some cool parenting stuff, it's fashion stuff, it's business stuff, it's career stuff. It's a whole lot of really great content out there on it's taffeta.com. And you can read those articles out there. You can subscribe, support that publication, because it's definitely the kind of thing that you guys want to have a part of, and find them out on Instagram. That's how I found them and how they found me. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the show. And tune in next week. We're actually, this is the big announcement. We were not going to be live on the radio next week, but in fact we are now, because the Boston College game doesn't kick off till 7:30. So I don't have to leave for Clemson until after the radio show. And so we are going to do a live show on makethepointradio.com and 100.7 The Point FM in Columbia, South Carolina, next Saturday, October 2nd. So we'll see you then. Thanks for being here. Take care.